Okay, it's a new year and it's time for Before the Curtain Goes Up again. Now, this is a show with the remarkable Keith Alessi, who's got a remarkable story, and he set a lot of it to music. Keith, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Looking great there. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Now, tomatoes tried to kill me. Now, talk me through this. You were a corporate CEO. You retired, and then you suddenly went, "I'm gonna write a show." What prompted that?
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't quite that direct a line. I was a business guy my whole life and never really a musician, but I had a passion for the banjo. And so I had filled my closet with a banjo collection I couldn't play, always anticipating I'd get to it one day. You know how it is, life gets in the way. And ultimately, I decided when it was time to retire back in 2015, I was going to get to playing those banjos. But I had no sooner retired and I was given a cancer diagnosis and told I had a less than a 50% chance of living a year.
Oh
So
my
I,
goodness.
yeah, so I had esophageal cancer, which by the way, the tomatoes gave me. So the name of the show is Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me, but Banjos Saved My Life. The tomatoes are both literal and metaphorical.
Hmm.
They literally tried to kill me um, by giving me cancer through acid reflux heartburn. But I also grew up in a fairly abusive first generation Italian family, so they represent that as well. And upon receiving the diagnosis, I threw myself into trying to learn to play the banjo. It was the only positive thing going on in my life. And ultimately, I made it through the cancer. I actually learned how to play. I found a lot of emotional as well as physical healing in a circle of musicians. So the banjos are physically, they saved my life, but emotionally did so well as well. That became the title to the show when people started saying, hey, you need to tell this story. So it was after all that that I decided, I need to write this down. I'd been on big stages my whole life on Wall Street. I was pretty well known as a public company CEO. I'd gotten a lot of notoriety for transactions and deals I'd done. So
Because you were an accountant. You started off in accounting and sort of built up a, so what's that called, a CFO? Were you a
well, I
CFO?
started as I started as a CFO, but I ended up as a CEO. And I was running fairly sizable companies. I had 30,000 employees in one company. Last one was about 6 or 7,000, both in Canada and the US. And so I didn't need to be on the stage. I mean, I'd had big stages in my life. I taught at college. That's kind of a stage of sorts. But people said you need to tell this story, and that's what took this show ultimately
And
to the Toronto Fringe Festival of all places in
well,
2018.
well, it led you to Erika Conway, the remarkable. Like, she is effervescent and talented, and she was one of the ones who said you need to like write it down, right? Was she? How
Well,
did
once I decided I wanted to actually tell the story in public, she was the only person I knew that had any connection to the stage. I had seen her do a show at the Edmonton Fringe, and so I gave her a call. I had met her through my travels and business and whatnot. I called her up and said, "What do I do?" And she guided me. And like a good business guy, I hired her to be my producer and director.
nice? And she sometimes stage manages the show too, right? When you,
Oh, she
you
does everything. She does my social media. She's a jack of all trades. I mean, this is not a big operation. It's her and me, and that's it. So she helps me set up, and she sometimes runs the lights and the sound, and we make it work.
Now, I think this is remarkable. Like, yes, you had a passion for the banjo, but to be clear, you didn't know how to play it. You just knew you liked the instrument. So you learned the instrument. You went through this very traumatic experience of being told you had a year to live. So you tried to pour yourself into art. I always believe creativity and art is where we find salvation as we start to connect into that. And you're the literal embodiment of that because you did that. And here you are still.
Well, I mean, you nailed it. And a lot of times when describing the show, we talk about it's about the healing powers of the arts. I use that line in the show. It's real. I lived it. Um, and it's been incredible. I when I was a captain of industry, I had people pretty much did what I asked them to do because they had to, and you had some. I had some success and it felt good, but that's what I was paid to do. This has been a whole different level because there's rarely a show I do that somebody isn't coming out of that audience with a story. My show tends to hit people, certain people who've been on different or similar journeys. People, if we're doing a run, will come back 2 and 3 times, bringing friends and family with them. They'll say, I know somebody needs to hear this story. I have people come up to me and say, I needed to hear this message tonight. One of my favorite interactions, I was in Rosebud, Alberta. They have a nice little theater out there. And there's this guy sitting there in the front row the whole night. He just came up to me, had a tear in his eye, and he looked at me and he just said, I'm a cowboy. And he left. And I took it to mean, I don't cry very often. And so it's not a depressing show. I mean, we'll certainly get tears out of people, but tell a lot of corny jokes and try to keep it lighthearted. And it's really it's meant to be more inspirational.
Well, so yeah, spoiler alert, you live, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, I'm Keith, and I'm a recovering executive. There's just something about the banjo. I wanted to learn how to play that 3-finger style that Earl Scruggs played, and I ran out. I get my first inexpensive banjo. The banjo player will play for $1. Will stop for $5. Monday morning, I walked into my office in Edmonton and I quit that CEO job to go all in on my banjo dreams. 13 days later, I was told I had a 50% chance of living a year. If I can just get through what's right there in my windshield, I can get through this situation eventually. This is my story about my journey down the road, every word of it true, and how the pursuit of a passion took me to a place I could have never imagined. Some of it you learn the hard way. Some of it you read on a page. Some of it you learn from heartbreak. Most of it you learn with age.
Now, one of the things that's kind of cool, that's remarkable when we were talking beforehand, is also when you and Erika were developing this script, when you first started doing it, it got bad reviews. It wasn't doing so well. And you kept at it though. You knew that this is the thing about, what is it Ira Glass talks about? Our taste is here, but our skill is here. We got to keep working our skill to get to where our taste is. So you knew you had a show. It just wasn't it yet. So what was that process like?
Well, I did like a warm up before I went to the first real stage performance was in Toronto at the Toronto Fringe. But I had some friends in Chicago that owned an art gallery, and they put me in there and brought a bunch of people in just so I'd get used to having the lights on and a microphone on. A couple kids came up to me after the show. They were crying and they said, we hadn't heard a banjo in 5 years. Our father was a banjo player, and he died of cancer. And we haven't heard a banjo since he died. And your energy, Keith, is his energy. So they felt like they'd been called there. And so I left that first rehearsal kind of show thinking, oh, there's something here. And a normal person would take lessons. They'd start small. I didn't do it yourself. I just walked on stage and started telling the story. So it was funny. One of the first reviews said, this does not rise to a theatrical production. This should be a TED Talk. And they were probably right, because that's what I was used to in business and being in lecture halls. Well, interestingly, fast forward 4 years, we've had all kinds of 5-star reviews and glowing reviews and whatnot. One of the reviewers said, this guy should do a TED Talk.
So the show had evolved away from a TED Talk, and now someone was trying to push you back towards it.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been a TED Talk, but I could see where, it was accurate criticism. But they say you shouldn't read your reviews. I read them not because I need them from an ego standpoint, but if I'm missing something, I want to know. And what was very helpful in those early reviews, if I saw the same things coming up, I'd say, okay, we're not landing on that point. They're not understanding it. And I don't blame them. It's clearly I'm not delivering. And what's really been helpful in the last 2 years, well, post-COVID, we've been doing artist talkbacks after the show because a lot of people want to hear my story of the story of the story. It's almost better than the show. And if I get the same question 2 or 3 talkbacks in a row, I'm saying, well, there's something I probably should just address during the script. And then these people won't be sitting there wondering about this.
You know what I love is that I think it's because of your business acumen, because it is tricky when artists are creating work, right? And you don't want to bend in every direction from every comment. But the fact that you're saying, when I hear it 3 or 4 times, then I go, right? So you're looking at the data as a businessman and going, okay, we clearly have an issue here. We need to address it. I love that. I think that's amazing.
Well, you know, and the thing you got to be careful about, particularly in the arts, if you surround yourself with your friends as other artists, is you all start drinking the Kool-Aid and believing your own story. And what's been real interesting, I was in the grocery business many, many years ago. And myself and the rest of the executive team, you know, we hired a focus group. And we'd be behind glass, and the public relations firm would be interviewing these people. People didn't know who they were. They just said, we want to, you know, they paid them some money to come in and talk about all the grocery stores in town, but they didn't know who was sponsoring it. So they'd ask, well, who's got the best meat in town? Who's got the best produce in town? And it was brutal because a lot of times we heard things about our business we didn't want to hear. But our customers were telling us, your meat program isn't as good as you think it is. Now, you can sit there and get offended by it, or you can do something about it. So it's a feedback loop. You put things out into the market, if you will, and you get feedback. Now, artistically, I mean, I'm very vulnerable on stage. It's a very personal story, so I'm not going to bend to everybody's whim. But if there are big unanswered questions in people's minds that are getting in the way of them hearing the real message, then I want to make sure I throw that in there, so it just kind of diffuses that and they can focus on the main story. But nice. Being a business guy has been interesting, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, now you have done the show over 240 times since 2018. You've been to 4 different countries, but the thing that's even more remarkable, because you have been, you know, I've been an artist all my life and I am not very successful. I'm surviving, but because you were in the business world, you're fine. You're doing fine. So you did something remarkable with the money that you were making from the show. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we donate 100% of our gate, both the children's cancer charities and the theater charities. Once COVID hit, I started sending all the gate to the theaters because they got beat up pretty badly. But prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of support for children's cancer. And it also you know, I'm in a good spot. I don't want people thinking I'm out here, you know, cashing the check. And so the audiences know that we're doing that. I think it changes their perspective on me as well that way.
Nice. Now you get 10 seconds. Say you got someone who doesn't like banjo music, all right, or they think they don't like banjo music, and they don't want to see a one-man show because, you know, sometimes people go, oh, what if I don't like that one man, right? So you have to sell people now. You have this is not Erika selling the show. This is you selling the show. The camera's going to go onto you, and you're going to try to tell these people why they should go see it. What's in it for them? Ready, set, and go.
Well, it's a universal message about pursuing your passion. Everybody's got a banjo in their closet. It might not be a banjo, but there's something that's giving you a nudge that you need to pursue. The healing power of the arts, it's real. And in this particular show, it's fast moving, it's humorous, it's got music in it, but it's not a concert. The music is just soundtrack.
Wonderful. Keith, it's been delightful to hear you. Your show has been on my periphery forever. You got 3 shows coming up in the suburbs of BC. So I think
we just announced the 4th one. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be at the ACT Arts Center down in Maple Ridge. It's one night only. It's going to be a fundraiser for the hospital there as well as the theater. And the Romeros, unbelievable folk players, are going to be joining me on stage. It's going to be a great evening. It's for charity, and they get a tax receipt there. But we'll also be at Meek in West Vancouver. We're going to be at the Evergreen and in Surrey at the.
I'll have it all up on the screen. So well, it's just a show where it is. And Keith, congratulations on the set. I hope the show runs for another 20 years.
Thanks so much.
Good job.